We are Group Project 5. I'm Ali.
I'm Joe.
I'm Yue.
I'm Ben. And next slide, thank you. So we started out by meeting with lean manufacturing students. Given the project of defining what safety standards needed to be done or introduced to the labs, the MIME labs, to determine what we needed to do in order to keep them open and operating. What we found was there was little to no lab instructions set for students, and that they had manuals, but they weren't reading them. And so we needed to figure out a way to make universal safety standards for these labs in order to make them more reliable or viable for the students. Slide, please. And so what we started out with was we decided to go and A, inspect these labs and see what we found was wrong with them, and B, to conduct interviews with the instructors and professors to figure out what they thought was wrong with the assignments, because they were the labs, because they were the ones that had more experience and hands-on work with all these labs.
So we ended up doing about 6 labs. Each of us did about 2. Unfortunately, Ben couldn't get a good interview. But the robotics and instrumentation lab, those are actually 2 different labs. Those are the ones that I did. First thing I did was I had to determine what the problems were. So the first thing I found was it was overall kind of crowded, just from pure observation. So another thing I saw was the tables were kind of small, so it was possible drop hazards where parts would roll off the table or something like that. I also noticed there was a pile of parts over to the side, not really marked or anything like that. It was kind of unnecessary, I would say. And there's also very few safety signs that I noticed. It was just, there's basically just a room with a bunch of tables and computers. The next thing I did was I analyzed by asking the students what they thought. A lot of people just tended to stay at their stations. They didn't really do a whole lot of moving around. There was some, mainly just to get parts and other things like that, but they mainly stayed at the computers. The standing desks I noticed were a bit narrow, as I just said, just causes drop issues. Extra parts are in fact necessary, as it turns out. The professor that runs those labs, Professor Jonathan Hurst, he mentioned that for the robotics part of that lab, they have to build a robot, and in order to build a robot, you need parts. So that's what all the parts are for. They just could be a little bit more organized. Some of the students couldn't say where basic safety supplies were kept, so I thought that was kind of a problem. So we should probably work on a little bit more safety signs. The last part is improving. So improving how the tables are spread out, maybe get some larger tables so that way people don't drop parts on the floor that often. Organize those excess inventory. And also you can add large safety signs so people are easy to read, easy to see in case an emergency.
So next I'm going to talk about the manufacturing engineering educational lab. First thing that you notice as soon as you walk in that room, you'll notice that the lab is very unorganized, and there are a lot of machines that are no longer used. And if you want to find like different items or tools, it's going to be like a very challenging for you because nothing is labeled in that room. Also, one thing that I noticed is that once you walk in that room, you will see like a lot of people, and it gets really crowded, and there's no enough space to work with, and it's really hard to get around in that room. So in terms of safety and instructions, I only saw 3 signs in that room. The first one says that everyone is required to wear safety glasses while using equipment. And the second one says emergency on the top, but it's really hard to read like what's in the text. And the third sign says that no food or drinks in the lab. Also, there's no first aid kits, so yeah. So here are some pictures for the lab, so you can have like a better idea.
And we did have a chance to learn more about the composites, materials, manufacturing, and machining product realization lab. And they are located at Graph 107 and Rogers Hall 118, and they are both led by Dr. Jensen. And here are some pictures that we took while students are working on the labs. And I did have a chance to talk to Dr. Jensen and discuss about the safety issues that we found in the labs. And one issue that we found is that the room is actually really crowded, and students don't really have enough space to move. And the second issue that we found is that some students do not clean their workstations after they finish their assignments after class. And the third issue that we found is about the toolbar. And because there's only one toolbar located on one side of the room, and students from the other side has to take a long walk to the end of the other side to grab the tools, which takes them a lot of times. And another issue that we found is that students that usually don't wear gloves and glasses usually have a higher chance of getting involved in accidents. And we also come up with some improvements after we found the issues. And the first solution that we found is setting up a second toolbar on the other side of the lab, so students can grab their tools in both sides and won't make the lab really crowded. And the second one is space out tables, so students can be easier to work with each other and have more space to move. And the third idea that we think of is that ensure students to have sufficient safety instruction before using specific equipment, so it can reduce the chance of having accidents in the labs. And the next one that we have is that having additional safety signs around the lab, so students can have an idea about how to use the labs and how to prevent having accidents. And the last one would be standardized response period, so students can know when they have to clean up and putting tools back after they finish their assignments.
So in conclusion, what we found was that there was common problems between many of the labs, such as being disorganized, too crowded, not having enough safety signs, and so on. So what we decided was to, after compiling all our info, to try to recommend these fixes, whether it's larger tables or better labeling, or maybe some kind of new organizational system such as bins or cubbies. And additional to this, the lean manufacturing students that we were partnered up with intend on writing easier to read, either safety instructions or signs and guidelines that apply to all of these labs. So if you go to one lab and you've already been instructed in how to act in one, you will already know how to conduct yourself in another lab. And thank you for listening to our presentation.